I remember the exact moment my heart stopped. Not metaphorically, literally. 1 second I was gasping in the emergency room, my chest a battleground of pain, and the next, silence. A stillness so profound it swallowed the world. No rhythm, no pulse, just darkness. What came next wasn't light, it was pressure, like sinking under an ocean of whispers, distant voices, cold fingertips brushing against my skin, and a strange sensation, like being tugged upward while something heavy tried to pull me down. They told me later my heart had flatlined for over 15 minutes, that I was clinically dead, and yet, here I am, telling you this. The team didn't give up. They connected me to an ECMO machine, something I'd never heard of, let alone imagined would take over my heartbeat. It wasn't meant to be a long-term solution, certainly not for 72 hours, but they kept it running, and so did I. For 3 full days, my blood circulated without a pulse. My organs teetered between survival and collapse. My family was told to prepare for the worst. The machines breathed, pumped, and filtered in my place, keeping a shell of me alive, while my mind floated in some purgatory I still can't describe. What happened in those 72 hours would not only defy every protocol and expectation, it would change the way I saw life, death, and everything in between. I wasn't supposed to come back. But somehow, impossibly, I did. And what I remember from the edge still haunts me. My name is Marcus Reed, and I'm a 28-year-old firefighter from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I never imagined I'd become a medical anomaly. I was young, fit, and trained to run into burning buildings, not to become the centerpiece of an experimental life support procedure. But life, or maybe death, had different plans. On February 11th, during what seemed like a routine winter shift, I collapsed at the station. No warning signs, no prior illness, just a sudden crushing pain in my chest, and then nothing. Paramedics performed CPR for over 15 minutes before stabilizing me with defibrillators. But when I arrived at the hospital, my heart gave out again. That's when a young ICU doctor made a controversial call to place me on ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It's a rare intervention usually reserved for patients in end-stage cardiac or respiratory failure. It involves pumping blood outside the body into a machine that oxygenates it and returns it, bypassing the heart and lungs entirely. It's not a permanent fix. It's a desperate lifeline. What followed was a 72-hour window where I had no pulse, no cardiac rhythm, and no guarantee of survival. My brain should have been damaged. My organs should have shut down. But something else happened. Something that none of them, or I, can fully explain. In this story, I'll take you through what it was like to wake up in a world I thought I had already left, to feel machines breathing for me and strangers rooting for me, to survive the impossible and to face the question, why me? Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and comment below telling us what country and city you're watching from. The morning of February 11th started like any other shift at Ladder Company 22. Snow clung to the sidewalks and the wind off Lake Michigan cut through even the thickest layers of turnout gear. I remember laughing with Tyler, my station partner, as we shoveled the engine bay. Nothing felt off. No dizziness, no fatigue, no warning signs that my body was quietly preparing to shut down. We were dispatched to a minor car accident near 6th and Maple. No injuries, just 2 sedans, kissing bumpers, and an elderly woman rattled from the impact. As we were helping her into the ambulance for a precautionary check, I felt it, a strange heat creeping up my spine, followed by a sudden drop, as if my insides had turned to ice. I staggered, my vision blurred. A high-pitched ringing started in my ears. I tried to say something to Tyler, but my mouth wouldn't move. Then, darkness. I collapsed in the middle of the street, boots splayed, face down on the frozen asphalt. I was told later that my helmet rolled into the gutter and the woman I had just helped screamed loud enough to stop traffic. Tyler was first to reach me. He radioed for immediate backup and began chest compressions while shouting my name over and over. CPR continued through the ride to the ER, unrelenting, mechanical, desperate. My heart had entered ventricular fibrillation, a chaotic rhythm where the heart quivers instead of pumping. Without immediate intervention, it's fatal. At County General, the ER team took over. Shocks, epinephrine, airway management. I was brought back, briefly, only to crash again minutes later. That was when Dr. Lena Hartman, the on-call critical care attending, entered the room and made eye contact with Tyler. "He's coding again," she said flatly. "How long was he down?" 15 minutes before the first pulse, Tyler replied, voice cracking. "No response after second arrest. We're losing him." Most patients with prolonged CPR show signs of irreversible damage by then, but something in me still fought, some flicker of neurological activity that showed promise. Dr. Hartman ordered full-body cooling and initiated ECMO protocol, a decision that would later be scrutinized and celebrated in equal measure. Normally, patients are only placed on ECMO if the cause of cardiac failure is known and potentially reversible, like myocarditis or a massive pulmonary embolism. But in my case, the cause was still a mystery. My labs were clean, no signs of heart attack, no clots, no infections. My heart had simply stopped. Lena took the risk. Cannulas were inserted into my femoral artery and vein. My blood began circulating outside my body through an artificial lung and pump. The room grew silent except for the rhythmic hiss and whir of the ECMO machine. I was now sustained entirely by an external circuit. Heartbeat? Absent. Hope? Unstable. My parents were called. My sister flew in from Houston. My fiancée, Rachel, rushed from her nursing shift 2 towns over, pale as death when she saw the tubes that replaced the man she loved. And through it all, I lay there, pulseless, alive in theory, unreachable in practice. The first 24 hours on ECMO were a fragile balance between life and total shutdown. I wasn't conscious, but my body was still reacting to the trauma, the intervention, the machines. My oxygen levels fluctuated, my kidneys stalled, my liver enzymes spiked, and somewhere behind all the numbers and charts, I, Marcus Reed, was drifting further from the surface. The ICU became a battlefield. Dr. Hartman assembled a rotation of specialists, cardiology, nephrology, neurology, all trying to determine why a healthy 28-year-old had flatlined without warning. A biopsy of my heart showed mild inflammation, hinting at viral myocarditis, but it wasn't definitive. The blood cultures came back negative. Every clue seemed to contradict the last. Meanwhile, ECMO was doing its job. It oxygenated my blood and maintained circulation, but it came with a heavy price. My legs began swelling rapidly, especially the left. The cannula had likely caused vascular damage. Compartment syndrome was setting in, and a vascular surgeon had to perform a fasciotomy, cutting deep into the tissue to relieve the pressure and preserve circulation. My family was asked to sign consent forms for the procedure with the added caveat that amputation might become necessary if necrosis developed. Rachel nearly fainted. My mother clutched a rosary so tightly that her palm bled. My father, the former Marine, had to step outside and vomit in the parking lot. The bleeding didn't stop. ECMO requires anticoagulants to prevent clots in the machine, but they also turned every incision into a slow hemorrhage. My hemoglobin dropped dangerously. Platelet transfusions were ordered. I was becoming a textbook case of everything that can go wrong, and still they fought to keep me tethered to life. On the second night, I began to seize. Not once, but repeatedly. Nurses rushed in. EEG pads were placed across my scalp. A neuroconsult confirmed I'd suffered multiple brief cortical seizures. There was fear of hypoxic brain injury. No one said it out loud, but the prognosis was grim. Even if I woke up, who would I be? Dr. Hartman stood at my bedside long after visiting hours ended. She studied my chart, the monitor, the scans. Then she made a call. She told the ECMO team to maintain support through the 3rd day. Most would have started weaning by then, or discontinued entirely, but she sensed something in the labs. My lactate levels were dropping. A subtle sign my organs might be recovering. In those 72 hours, time warped. Nurses worked in hushed shifts. Machines beeped a monotonous symphony. Rachel refused to leave, sleeping upright in a chair beside me, whispering things I'll never remember but somehow still shaped me. She held my hand constantly, even when it was cold, unresponsive, covered in wires. Outside the room, ethics discussions began. Was it fair to continue this level of intervention? Was I a miracle in progress or a prolongation of the inevitable? One nurse, Amanda, later told me she fought to keep me on. I've seen hopeless cases, she said. You didn't look like one of them, not even close. By the end of day 3, my vitals began to shift. Not dramatically, but enough to make heads turn. Urine output increased. My pupils responded to light. And most shockingly of all, against every statistical model, I moved my fingers. Just slightly, just enough for the world to catch its breath. The movement of my fingers was dismissed at first. An involuntary spasm, they said. Dr. Hartman wasn't convinced. She ordered a repeat neurological exam. This time, when the resident called my name and applied pressure to my nail bed, I didn't just twitch. I withdrew my hand. It was small, clumsy, barely perceptible, but it was intentional. Suddenly, everything changed. Sedation was lightened. The team prepared for what they called a neuro-awakening trial. I was still pulseless, still on ECMO, but they needed to know if my brain was there, if I was still there. Nurses dimmed the lights. Monitors were silenced. For the first time in 3 days, the room held its breath, waiting not for machines, but for me. My eyes opened slowly. Blinking against the glow of sterile light, I remember the ceiling tiles, the kind you only notice when life gets quiet enough to study them. My mouth was too dry to speak, my throat filled with tubes. But I could see, I could hear. And when Dr. Hartman leaned over me and whispered, "Marcus, if you can hear me, blink twice," I did. That moment was seismic. The room erupted in tears. One nurse dropped her clipboard. Rachel sobbed into my hand, murmuring prayers and apologies and words I couldn't yet understand. My mother collapsed into my father's arms. For 3 days, I'd been on the edge of nothingness, and now I was clawing my way back. But I wasn't safe yet. My heart had not restarted. ECMO was still doing all the work, and every extra hour on the machine increased my risk of infection, clots, or catastrophic bleeding. A decision had to be made. Either transition me off ECMO and risk destabilization, or attempt cardiac stimulation while still on bypass, a dangerous maneuver. Dr. Hartman pushed for a hybrid strategy. She coordinated with electrophysiology to try temporary pacing, stimulating the heart to beat in sync with ECMO support. They threaded a pacing wire through my neck and into the right ventricle. The room held its breath again as they activated the pulse. And then, a beat. My first heartbeat in 72 hours. Weak, uncertain, but mine. Another followed, and another. The machine's rhythm and mine began to dance together, then slowly ECMO pulled back, letting my heart take the lead. For the first time, I was no longer a passenger in my own body. They monitored me hour by hour, watching as my organs stabilized. My kidneys began filtering, my liver enzymes dropped, the seizures stopped, and my heart, my stubborn, battered heart, found a rhythm. Not perfect, but steady, strong enough to reduce ECMO to standby mode. On the morning of day 4, the team gathered. Lena looked at my vitals, then at my family, and said 2 words that sounded like resurrection. We wean. The process began that afternoon. Slowly, carefully, they shut down the circuit. My body was on its own again. I was breathing, circulating, thinking, alive. But the true miracle wasn't in the technology or the timing. It was in something no scan or lab could capture. A will to live that refused to quit. A team of strangers who didn't see a lost cause but a man worth saving. And a moment, 1 blink, 2 blinks, that turned the tide of fate. Coming off ECMO wasn't the finish line. It was the start of a whole new war. My heart was beating again. Yes, but it was fragile, hesitant. Every beat felt borrowed. The doctors warned Rachel that my recovery could reverse in minutes. We've taken him off the bridge, Dr. Hartman explained. Now he has to walk the shore. The pacing wire remained in place. My heart rhythm, though present, was erratic. Premature ventricular contractions showed up on telemetry every few minutes. There were discussions of implanting a temporary ICD, an internal defibrillator, to protect against sudden cardiac death. It would mean more surgery, more risk, more uncertainty. I was conscious now, able to blink, nod, and eventually whisper, and that meant I had to be part of the decision. The medical team brought me the options. Option 1, the ICD. Option 2, medication and observation, with the understanding that I might crash again. I whispered 3 words, hoarse and trembling. Put it in. The procedure was done under light sedation. I remember the cold antiseptic on my chest, the clipped voices above me, the overhead lights too bright. I wasn't afraid of dying. I had already been there. I was afraid of waking up broken, of surviving only to live in fear. The ICD was implanted without complication. It was no bigger than a matchbox, resting under my skin like a sentinel. I was moved out of the ICU to a cardiac step-down unit. I no longer needed 1.1 monitoring. My vitals held steady, but my body had changed. Every movement felt foreign. My muscles had begun to atrophy. My legs were wrapped in surgical dressings. I didn't recognize myself in the mirror. Then came the moment they asked me to stand. 2 physical therapists helped swing my legs over the bed. The floor felt miles away. My blood pressure dropped instantly. My vision swam. I tried to lift my weight and crumpled. The damage from the fasciotomy, combined with days of immobility, had taken a brutal toll. For the first time since I woke up, I cried. Not because of pain, but because I realized how far I still had to go. Survival had a cost, and now it was time to pay it in sweat, effort, and patience. The team introduced me to a cardiac rehab specialist, a woman named Janice, who would become my fiercest coach and fiercest advocate. Janice had this way of speaking to me like I was already whole. "We don't rebuild the same man," she said. "We build a better one." Every day she pushed me further, 2 steps one day, 4 the next. She taught me how to breathe past the panic, how to use my arms to brace my trembling legs. "Your heart remembers," she'd say. "Let it teach the rest of you." Meanwhile, my case made rounds through the hospital's grand rounds and even reached a research team in Chicago. Dr. Hartman began writing it up for publication. My story, my survival, was being studied, not just because I lived, but because the sequence of decisions that led to it had redefined timing and trust in ECMO use. Still, every night when the lights dimmed and the hospital quieted, I'd lie there and wonder what part of me had been left behind in those 72 hours. I didn't dream. I didn't feel peace. What I felt was weight and gratitude, and the faint, lingering echo of machines that once kept me alive when my own body refused to. Rehabilitation didn't happen in a straight line. It was a crooked path. 1 step forward, 2 back. Some mornings, I woke up feeling strong enough to walk to the hallway sink. Other days, I couldn't even lift my arm without trembling. Recovery wasn't a triumphant march. It was a negotiation between willpower and limitation. Janice remained by my side every weekday. She charted my milestones like they were miracles. First unassisted step, first full breath without oxygen support, first time I climbed 2 stairs without collapsing. But behind every milestone was a battlefield of frustration. My heart had restarted, but so had a war inside me, a fight to reclaim my body. Rachel was my anchor. Every night she read aloud to me from our favorite novels. On the hardest days, she'd bring her nurse's humor into the room, making jokes about hospital food or how ECG stickers are secretly out to ruin all chest hair. But on the quiet nights, when the weight of it all settled into my bones, she'd hold my hand and whisper, "You're still you." One of the hardest parts wasn't physical, it was emotional. I became terrified of silence. After so many hours in a void, any moment without sound made me anxious. I asked for a white noise machine in my room just so I wouldn't have to face that emptiness again. Even music made me cry, especially the first time someone played the song that was on the radio during my collapse. I was discharged after 41 days. My chest carried a scar from the ICD. My leg bore the line of the fasciotomy. My soul felt raw and tender, like a wound that had closed but not yet healed. I stepped outside into the sunlight and wept. It was too bright, too warm, too alive. At home, recovery continued. Physical therapy 3 times a week, cardiac checkups twice a month, daily walks, 1 mailbox at a time. Rachel installed railings in the shower and adjusted the bed to fit my new pace of life. I couldn't return to firefighting. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I could return to breathing, to laughing, to hoping. I started speaking at local EMT training sessions, sharing my story. One trainee asked, "What did it feel like to be dead?" I didn't have an answer. Not a good one. But I told him the truth. It felt like falling into nothing and being pulled out by hands I couldn't see. That stuck with him. It still sticks with me. Months later, I met a teenage girl in the rehab center who had survived septic shock thanks to ECMO. She was afraid of walking again, afraid her body would betray her. I sat beside her and said, "Your heart doesn't owe you perfection, just rhythm. Let it lead you." Her eyes lit up. That's when I realized I hadn't just survived. I had become someone others needed. Dr. Hartman stayed in touch. She eventually presented my case at a national cardiology conference, highlighting the risks of prolonged ECMO and the potential for meaningful survival in select young patients. My chart, once a stack of desperate interventions, had become a blueprint for hope. Today, I still carry a defibrillator under my skin and occasional nightmares in my sleep, but I also carry something else, a story. Not just of medical odds defied, but of people, doctors, nurses, family, who believed in me when I had no pulse, no heartbeat, and no voice. And that story, it beats inside me, louder than ever. It's strange how your definition of life changes once you've seen it slipping away, twice. I used to think living meant moving fast, saving others, proving my strength. Now, I see it in slower moments. The steady rhythm of a heartbeat, the warmth of a hand in mine, the quiet courage it takes to rise after being broken. My survival wasn't just a medical success, it was a testament to the human spirit and to the brilliance of those who refused to let go when I had nothing left to give. The machines may have kept me alive, but it was people who brought me back, who held on to the possibility of me when I couldn't even imagine myself returning. If you take anything from this story, let it be this: don't underestimate the strength of the unseen fight, the one happening inside a quiet hospital room or inside someone's chest. Every heartbeat is a miracle in motion, and sometimes, even without a pulse, a life can be waiting to begin again. Make sure to join us next time for another incredible medical case that blurs the line between science and the extraordinary.